Another person you talk about in your piece for TruthOut is Cynthia Valdez Shank. Tell us Cynthia's story and how she actually doesn't, she currently doesn't make the requirement for the clemency program either.
So Cynthia Valdez Shank is a mother of three, and in the early 2000s, or in the late 1990s to 2000s, she was the girlfriend of a man who was dealing crack. And when she first met the man, she didn't realize it. They met, they fell in love, they had a relationship, they had moved in together. And then she said one night she came home from work early and found him dealing crack out of their home. So that was the first night that she realized what was going on. They had a fight. He beat her very badly. And as in the case with many abusive relationships, the next day he was sorry. She thought that maybe this is a one-time thing. And the abuse kept getting worse. The violence kept getting worse. Her boyfriend began to shrink her world so that she was unable to really realize how she could get out of this relationship. It became more about, survival and trying to minimize the violence and the harm. And in the meantime, he was climbing up the drug ladder, and until 2002, when he was killed as he was trying to go, as he was walking to his front door. And this should have ended her nightmare, because suddenly she does not have this abusive boyfriend. She was picked up by the police at the hospital. She was questioned for hours. At first, because she had been so terrorized by her boyfriend, she told them she didn't know anything, and then finally she told them what she knew, and they let her go home, told her that there were no charges pending against her. She went off, she started to rebuild her life. She got married to somebody who, from her account, from her brother's account, from all accounts, was a wonderful man, whom she told about this previous relationship, including the drug dealing and the murder and the arrests or the police questioning. So he knew all this, and the couple figured that this was behind her. They got married, they started a family, and then years later, she was arrested on conspiracy to distribute cocaine charges. And she found out at the same time that she was pregnant. And because she thought, well, I didn't do anything, the only thing I'm guilty of is staying in an abusive relationship with a man who sold drugs, she decided to take her case to trial. And she lost, and she was sentenced to 15 years. So imagine thinking that, your nightmare is finally over, and then years later being told that you have to stand trial for not escaping your abusive boyfriend earlier, not going against every fear that he's inculcated in you to try to turn him into the police, but then instead being charged with conspiracy and being sentenced to 15 years. And she's one of over 8,000 women currently in federal prison for a drug offense. And that makes up more than half of the female federal prison population.
Another woman you talk about in the piece is Alice Johnson. Tell us Alice's story.
So Alice Johnson is a mother of 5, and she was living in Memphis, Tennessee when she lost her job. And she was a manager at FedEx, and she was, making enough money to support her family of 5. She had benefits, she had a pension plan, so she was supporting her family. She was getting by. She was, living her life. And then she lost her job. The next year, she found another job at 1/3 the pay with no benefits. And she still has 5 children to support. Her oldest is in college. She's, helping to pay for her daughter's college education. Her youngest is still a preteen. And so she decided, what she says in hindsight was her biggest mistake, to pass along drug-related messages for money, basically. She said that she couldn't afford to pay all these bills otherwise, and she just thought, well, I can catch up on these bills, support my family. And so she was passing along messages, and what ended up happening was she was arrested, and she was the day before Thanksgiving. She was arrested. And she was also charged with conspiracy to possess cocaine, attempted possession of cocaine, and money laundering. And again, because she thought that her role was so minimal in this, that she could take it to trial, and a jury would believe her that, she never dealt drugs. She never, she, other than telling people who came to town, this is the number you call for this person, she didn't have anything to do with drug sales or drug deals, and a jury felt otherwise. And she was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. And most of the people who were on the conspiracy case with her, who had more information, were able to testify about their involvement, about her involvement, and many of them testified against her. And what she said was that most of them knew how the system worked already, and they knew that the more substantive their testimony could be against her and for other people, the better a deal that they would get. So today she's serving life in prison. Her children are all grown. Her youngest son is also in prison. He's like, his mother's incarceration has basically changed his pathway or direction in life from being a kid who was in high school, who talked about wanting to go to college and talked about his future, to being a kid who dropped out of high school, was living in a car, didn't want to leave the place where he and his mother had last lived together, and today is in state prison.